Visit us at Eduvvo. Thank you for calling Eduvvo.
So we have the basics of an enemy in, but let's start getting ourselves a player controller together. So I'm going to go to my content browser, blueprints. I'm going to right click and create a new blueprint class, and this is going to be a player controller class. And I'm going to call this, you guessed it, KG player controller base. So let's double click on this KG player controller base and see what we have inside of it. Okay, now I am going to be using this on my Night Girl, and it's going to be handling all of the brain and input stuff. Now the truth is there's very little that I actually need to do as far as the brain is concerned for the player, for the most part anyway. However, there is one big thing that we do need to consider, which is that at all times I want my character to face where my mouse is looking. So I'm going to make an event that's going to be a custom event, and I'm going to call it process mouse. Now for process mouse, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this most likely every tick, but if we ever switch over to using joypad controls, we're not going to. So for the time being, tick is going to call process mouse, and all this means is if process mouse, when it runs, it's going to say, okay, get the hit result under cursor by channel. What that means is we're going to look at where the mouse currently is, and we're going to find out what's underneath it. So when we get the hit result, what we want to do is we want to get that, and we want to go, well, this return value is true. If it hits something, so if there is something under my mouse and not just like an empty void, then what I want to do is I want to set the rotation of my control pawn. So I'm going to get the control pawn, and I'm just going to set the actor rotation. So if that's true, I'm going to set the actor's rotation. Now, what that means is I need to do one other thing. That is, before I call process mouse, I'm going to double check that I even have a pawn in my possession. Somehow, if I don't, things could go badly. So I'm going to say if this is valid, so if the controlled pawn is a valid thing and we have one, process this. So we're going to be setting the rotation of the controlled pawn, but how do we set their rotation? That's easy. How we do it is we get the hit result and then we break it, which gives us all of the variables inside of it. Now, from the hit result, we get this piece of information called location, which is the position in the world that our mouse traced down to. So I'm going to get the location, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the direction between myself and that position. So to do that, what I need to do is from the location, I'm going to go get unit direction. So this gets me the direction from the location, and I need to get the direction from me to it. So even though I dragged off of it, I actually want this to be in the to category, because the from section is going to be the location of the controlled pawn. So we're going to find the direction from me to the it. Now I'm then going to just simply plug this into rotation from x vector, which converts this into a rotation. And then I'm just going to plug this into here. Now there are a few issues with what I've just done, but this will work temporarily. I'm going to hit compile and I'm going to hit save. And there is something else I'm going to need to do before I continue. And what that is I'm going to need to go to my character, and I'm actually going to need to set them up with a camera, because this is my character right now, right? But if you think about it, my character needs to actually have somewhere for my camera to be when I'm controlling them. So to do that, what I'm going to do is, first off, I'm going to add a spring arm. Now a spring arm is essentially this red line that you can see here, it's a thing for us to put the camera on the end of, and at all times the spring arm checks to see if there's any objects between it and the camera. And if there is, it'll shrink itself down or expand itself out. So a spring arm is very, very useful. Now, I've added a spring arm, so the next thing I'm going to do is add a camera. Now, when I add the camera, you'll notice that spring arm allows me to actually put this, oh, hang on, I've just got to parent it to the spring arm. There we go. So you can see here that the camera is now at the end of the spring arm. So with that done, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to set this up to have the spring arm facing upwards. So I'm going to rotate this, and I'm going to position it here. Now, it's up to us how long we want the arm to be. My gut says 600 units is probably pretty good. If we want to, we could zoom out a little further and go 700. Up to you. You can also put it at a slight angle if you choose to. At the moment, I've got this set to here, but it's up to you. So we've got the character set up there, and the next thing that I'm going to do is, at the moment, the spring arm inherits the pitch, yaw, and roll from the character. But I don't want to do that. I want my up to always be up, regardless of which way the character is facing. So I'm going to check all of those. And finally, you'll see that you have this little section here called Enable Camera Lag. I highly recommend you turn this on. This just means that when the character starts moving, it's going to have a little bit of drift on the camera and not feel super jerky. So it's a pretty good feeling to have that in there. So now with that set, we've got all of the basics for the camera set up. Going to compile and save. And then finally, what I need to do is actually test what I've done. So to do that, I'm going to need to go ahead and create a base player controller game mode. Sorry, a base game mode that sets the player controller. So to do that, I just right-click, New Blueprint, Game Mode Base, and this is just going to be called KG Game Mode. And the KG Game Mode is going to say the default player controller class is KG Player Controller, default pawn class is the KG Character Base, everything else can stay as it is for the time being. Compile, save. So, if I were to get into this now, I'm going to double check that there's not a player start. Yeah, there is. So there is already a player start in the world all the way over here. I'm going to get this player start, and I'm actually going to place this in my map. And I'm going to hit play. Now, the thing that I need to do after I add it is in maps and modes, I need to tell it to use KG game mode. So I've set that up now, and this time when I hit play, you'll see we're here. Now, if you look closely, you can see as I rotate the mouse, we now have a character who's actually rotating to face my mouse. She doesn't have anything else going for her, and if I do this, she does that. But, you know, it's a start. So the first issue is that when I rotate my character like that, I'm currently setting her X, Y, and Z rotation. But if you think about it, the only actual rotation that I really want to change is her yaw. So I only want her spinning on the spot. I don't want her doing anything else. So if I want to, I could split this, and then just connect yaw to each other and ignore the rest. And you'll see that she's now rotating to face the mouse. And everything is good. Now, the next issue is that when I left click, did you see what happened? My mouse disappeared. Now the reason my mouse disappeared is that currently my player hasn't actually been told to show the mouse. So I need to actually set up the game such that when the player is playing the game, that the mouse is visible. Now that's a really easy thing to do. I'm just going to go back to my player controller, and on begin play, I'm going to type show mouse. And I'm going to check that so that it's true. Compile, save, play. There you go, my mouse no longer disappears. Fantastic. So next up, we're going to be doing the movement inputs so that my player can actually run around. One thing I do want to flag with you is this functionality that we have in here at the moment works, but it is instantaneous. So it is always facing my mouse, and there's no like delay at all, rotation rate. That is something that we can set up, but I'm going to be setting it up later. In the meantime, stick around for the input tutorials.